Mic test, one, two, three. Mic test, one, two, three. Mic test, one, two, three. Hello, 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 hello.
Mic test. Mic test. Mic test.
Mic test,
Mic test.
mic test. Hello, hello. Mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test. Live from DOST Calabarzon, we welcome you to Watch, Webinar and Technology Channel. Since 2011, DOST Calabarzon has been offering free webinars for the public, covering various topics from food safety and policies to new and existing technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, mabuhay! We have a series of interesting topics lined up for you today. This is through the initiative of the Department of Trade and Industry, Philippine Accreditation Bureau, in collaboration with DOST Calabarzon. Again, this is Watch. Before we begin, we would like to remind our audience to please take down notes as the discussion is going along. The PowerPoint presentation that you see in your screens will be available after the session. Be sure to accomplish the evaluation after each talk so that you will acquire an electronic certificate of participation which will be sent to your emails. Now, let us begin. Our speaker for today is the chair of the Department of Laboratory Medicine and also sits as one of the members of the board of directors of ACE Group of Hospitals. Not only that, she is also the current chair of Laboratory Accreditation Technical Committee for ISO 15189 accreditation at the Department of Trade and Industry, as well as the organizer of assessors training for ISO 15189 accreditation at the Department of Health. Alongside this, she also serves as the vice chair of the Institutional Ethics Review Board at the Philippine Heart Center and a member of the Subcommittee on Standards for Accreditation of the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. Committed to furthering education and professional development, she chaired the Committee on Scientific Program of the Philippine Society of Pathologists Annual Convention 2019, and for so many years chairs the Committee on Training, Education, and Research of the Philippine Council for Quality Assurance in Clinical Laboratories. To discuss the overview of ISO 15189, please welcome Dr. Marisa Oriliaza.
Of medical laboratories, particular requirements for quality and competence for ISO 15189 2012. These medical laboratories are clinical laboratories that perform tests for patients using the tissues and the body fluids of the patients, and it requires accuracy, precision, and affordability of patients' results. And as far as I know, very few laboratories, clinical laboratories, are accredited for ISO 15189 in the Philippines. I think there are only five, and I think that's very few for a country to have accreditation for ISO 15189 2012. Today, I'm going to present to you the reasons why, I think one of the reasons why there were very few clinical laboratories applying for ISO 15189 accreditation is because they thought it is difficult, and they thought that this is very expensive. Today, I'm going to present to you that that's not true, and I'm going to present to you how do you apply for accreditation, which is just easy, just like similar to that of laboratory inspection by the Department of Health or any ISO 9001 certification. Not working. Okay. So as I've said, these are my objectives: to present an overview of ISO 15189 2012, and to design and implement management and technical system. But what does ISO stand for? ISO is not an acronym, because ISO means International Organization for Standardization. It means it came from the word isos, which means equal, or equivalent, or similar, or alike, or identical, because ISO uses standards. And as we all know, standard means it is uniform for all. It has to be followed by everyone. ISO 15189 is for medical laboratories, particular requirements for quality and competence, and it is a blueprint for organizational excellence, success, and profitability. The scope of ISO 15189 2012 specifies requirements for quality and competence in medical laboratories, meaning it has two parts: the management requirements, as well as the second part is for the competence in medical laboratories. That's why it is for accreditation and not certification, because it adds competence of the medical technologists or medical scientists in the laboratory. There are two requirements, as I've said: the management requirements as well as technical requirements. For the management requirements, let's start with management requirements. The first standard is organization and management responsibility, which includes the organization and the management. And of course, organization means you have to have an organizational structure that will supervise the entire laboratory, starting from the laboratory director down to the lowest not really lowest member of the laboratory, but they include also the housekeeping, janitorial services, and others. Management responsibility is very important, because The management should have a commitment to help the entire laboratory have implement the quality management system of the laboratory. The requirements for management are general requirements, the legal entity, the ethical conduct, and of course the appointment of the laboratory director. The legal entity, of course, includes the license to operate and other accreditation by and other statutory regulations, statutory law, and regulatory law, and of course the ethical conduct of all the staff of the laboratory. And what is this ethical conduct? Both the laboratory is composed of the pathologists and the medical technologists, and these pathologists and the medical technologists belong to their specific the specific societies in which they have their own code of ethics. And this ethical conduct should mean that there should be less, there should be their integrity, their competence should be maintained on ethical conduct. The appointment of a laboratory director is very important because this is a requirement by the ISO 15189 and should have an appointment. And of course, this laboratory director should have, with the appointment, it should have the job description, the responsibility and authorities, and supervision of the entire laboratory. For the management responsibility, the management has two levels. One is the management of the hospital, and one is management of the laboratory through the laboratory director. So the entire laboratory is the one responsible is the laboratory director, in which the laboratory director should have commitment to the entire laboratory staff. He should know the needs of the users, all the users of the clinical laboratory. The hospital management should have full support to the laboratory, which is very important. Without the management support, there will be no successful 15189 accreditation or implementation of the standards. You have to support, the management should support the staff, and of course, what is important is the infrastructure. The infrastructure is very important because if you do not have the correct infrastructure, then it might lead to less compliance of the standards of ISO 15189. Now, what is in the management responsibility? The laboratory should have a vision, mission, core values, but not only knowing what is the vision, mission, and core values, but of course how to implement them and achieve the vision of the laboratory. So all the staff should know all the vision, mission, and core values and discuss this with the entire staff. They should know the role of each and every one. What is the laboratory's quality policy and quality objectives are required in the ISO 15189. Objectives are the simple objectives that should be smart, that should be measurable, and that is consistent with the quality policy. As usual, the laboratory should have objective, target, and plan for the laboratory. The laboratory should have regular quality planning as much as possible. It should be annually. We should start with revision and review of the vision, mission, core values, and then SWOT analysis until you get the strategies and action plans of the laboratory for the year. Of course, the quality management system is very important for the laboratory, and this has the general requirements for quality management system. For this, everybody knows that the levels of quality are 3, 4, One starts with the quality control, and second is quality assurance, and then, of course, the quality management system. In the laboratory, we should have a quality management system, which is the highest level of quality, and this should be implemented in the in the laboratory. Documentation requirements are very important in the laboratory, and this includes the quality manual, the quality policy, the quality objectives, the procedures, and the work instructions, guidelines, the forms, posters, etc. All these documents are important in the laboratory, and they should be, of course, this is an example of documented information where you have binders of different. These are color coded and kept by the document control custodian in the laboratory. Of course, this could be in also could be in electronic copies, and it should be easily available to all staff of the laboratory, and well distributed and active. Only active documents are found in the laboratory. Very important requirement is a quality document manual for ISO 15189-2012, which consists of all the policies and procedures of the laboratory. But all these documents are very, as I've said, are very important, but they have to be controlled. How are they controlled? To these stamps. We should have a stamps of master copy, controlled copy, confidential copy, external document, uncontrolled copy, and obsolete copies of the documents. Right. And these are examples of you should have in the laboratory a copy of the standard operating procedure for a control of document. Also, in the management requirements are the service agreements responsibility, where service agreements we have agreements with referral laboratories, and these referral laboratories should be selected and evaluated, and for the provision of examination results. Oftentimes, our experience on these referral laboratories to have a good implementation of the standard of operate, check for their consultants, check for the pathologists and the staff who are doing it and their equipment, and so on. Now, for external services and supplies, we have, of course, in the laboratory, we have suppliers, and we buy supplies and reagents from vendors and suppliers. What is important to have to comply with the standard is that the laboratory should have mutual beneficial relationship with the suppliers. The suppliers are should have their profile. The suppliers are evaluated every year for their continuous affiliation with the hospital. Now, 4.7 is advisory services, and these are given by the pathologist. And advisory services are very, very important. The pathologist can give advice to the clinicians or to the doctors who seek help for the type of specimen that has to be submitted to the laboratory. 4.8 is resolution of complaints. There is no laboratory with no customer complaints. They always have customer complaints, but all these complaints should be resolved daily. It has to be all these complaints are collected by the document control, the liaison officer if they have, or if they have a specific person to resolve the complaints of the patients. I have um, audited a laboratory that is ISO 15189 accredited, and what they do is that every day they get satisfaction survey from these patients from the OPD. If the outpatient failed to give their feedback, what they do is that every day they call the patient and ask them through email or through phone or cell phone what is their feedback for the patient, for the use of the laboratory. And if there are complaints, the complaints are resolved daily or immediately by the marketing director of the laboratory. Okay. Now, the customers should be, as I've said, should be talked. Should be the marketing director or the liaison officer or the one in charge of the customer complaint should talk to the customers right away. And an example of this is that if you remember what Shakey's has done, remember before the Pizza Hut has a higher revenue or more customers than Shakey's. But what the Shakey's did is that they got a consultant to do a strategic planning, and the advice of the consultant was to focus their their concern to the customer instead of having their strategic planning on the corporation itself. Instead, they were taught on how to look for and think of what the customer wants instead of what the Shakey's owner wants. So when they did that, now you will see that there are more customers going to Shakey's rather than to uh, to Pizza Hut. Um, I really I'm sorry if I if I have divulged that, but maybe I don't know if we can delete that because that is Shakey's and Pizza Hut's issues. Okay, I forgot that this is a webinar. Okay, so what I want to tell you is it should be customer focused, that the organization should therefore understand the current and future customer needs, meet the customer requirements, and strive to exceed customer expectations. Um, okay, the resource management. There are 4 resources in the laboratory. The first is the personnel. Second, facility. The third is reagents and supplies. Okay, and these resources needed to be implemented, maintain, and improve the quality management system, and should address customer satisfaction. Okay. Identification 4.9 is identification and control of non-conformities. Non-conformities, you will have this after you have been audited for ISO 15189. And if you have these non-conformities, you have to comply. You have to review and check these non-conformities. And in reviewing it, we should do kappa in the RCA. And what is kappa in RCA stand for? Kappa is corrective action, preventive action, and root cause analysis. If you have nonconformities, the first thing that you should do is to know why you have that nonconformity or root cause analysis before you can do corrective action and preventive action. In the corrective action, we will talk about that here. Okay, so corrective action, you do corrective action when you see nonconformities to be sure that it won't recur anymore. And what preventive action is, you see some potential or opportunities for nonconformities, and because of that, you can do preventive action. But the nonconformity has not happened yet, so you do preventive action. And after doing the corrective and preventive action, these are just opportunities where you can continually improve your quality management system. Continual, because there's a difference between continual and continuous. If you do continuous, then you just continue implementing your corrective action or preventive action. But if it is continual, you pause for a while and then review, because sometimes what you're doing is not really that good, so you can stop and then check. Okay. Now, continual improvement should be measurable and should be monitored and analyzed, like what I've said, because it is continual. Okay, in the factual approach to decision making for continual improvement, this is very important. You need data from this, and this data should be analyzed and analyzed, because you can use that in effective decisions. You cannot make decisions if you do not have factual data or information. Okay, do you know the difference between data and information? Data is the figures that you receive, that you analyze. The information is from the data you analyze and then inform everyone. That is information. So data are the figures, and that won't lie, because you have them figures. And but however, after analysis, you can use that as information and use that in decision making. Okay. Plan, do, check, and act cycle is used in continual improvement. This is a process approach, because everything that we do in the laboratory, they are all processes. All activities are considered processes, and these processes are used to do continual improvement. So what you do is plan, do, check, and act. Now, for the control of records, these records are the difference between a document and a record is that document, you have a simple document of request, and that is a form. For example, a request is a form, and once it is once you have the form, and once it is filled out, you call that already a document, and when you file it, it becomes a record. Now, record, we have statutory laws for the record, for the retention of records, and that is in the national. We follow it from the national archives. But however, we have a project at the DOH now that that we are almost finalizing the retention, the recommended retention for the blocks, for the slides, for the peripheral blood smears, for the others, for the gram stains, etc. And this will be released soon by the Department of Health. So we have this retention, but that is for records. We use the archives, national archives. Okay, for 4.14 evaluation and audits, we have now we have the general requirements for evaluation and audits, and this evaluation and audit should be a periodic review, and you should have SOP of the frequency of the audits that you're going to do. If it is once a year or twice a year, it depends on you. Okay, the requirements for the others are for this standard of evaluation and audits. Aside from periodic review, the assessment of user feedback, the staff suggestions, the internal audit, the risk management, the quality indicators, and reviews by external organizations. This is an example of assessment of user feedback. All laboratories, almost all of the laboratories are in the hospital, they have patient satisfaction form. But most of the hospitals don't, they just analyze and collect and analyze the patient satisfaction form, or for the satisfaction survey. But oftentimes they forget to get the data of how many patients are how many patients have submitted their feedback form, because not all of them submit their feedback form. So in our hospital, one of our hospitals, we get the retrieval result. How many percent of the patients submit user feedback? Because it is very important. Say, for example, if you have 100 patients a day and only 10 patients are sending you or submitting to you the feedback form, then it's not that good. So in one of the laboratories, that is ISO 50189 accredited. A while ago, I told you that this laboratory sees to it that 100% of the patients submit their feedback form. Assessment of user feedback, you should have a summary of the audit findings, which is very important. Not only the feedback, the retrieval form, but of course, a summary of the audit findings is very important. Internal audit is very important also. And we have general requirements, as I've said, periodic review, and they should be planned. In the internal audit, it is important to have a team leader, and you should have a core team for the internal audit. But how to become an internal auditor? Of course, there should be training on this. This is not an easy job, and internal auditors are required to have training on internal audit, and that these internal auditors will be interviewed during the audit by assessment by the assessors of ISO 15189. This one of the things that should be done is to measure and monitor the system of effectiveness of the quality management system. In quality management system, we have to focus on the customer, and the other one is to focus on the internal audit, because there should be a balance between the two. The customer satisfaction is the external perception by the customers, and the internal audit is the self perception, and there should be a balance between the two. As I've said, this is continual quality improvement. Before it's continuous. In our hospital laboratories, we have quality indicators that we monitor for quality improvement monthly, and that is analyzed every year for the management review. Now, for the management review, we have the following requirements: the general requirements, the review input, the review activities, and the review output. What are these inputs, activities, and output? Since this is a process approach, it all works in a process. And a process, as I've said, all the activities in the laboratory is a process. And since it is a process, involves inputs, actions accomplished, and outputs. And all activities within the organization can be viewed as interrelated processes. One process is not independent of any other process. All of these processes are interrelated. So that's why if there is a problem in one area, okay, your quality management system is affected because all these processes are interrelated. Now let's move on now to the technical requirements. The first standard in the technical requirements is personnel. Personnel, we have some requirements: general, personal qualifications, job descriptions, personal introduction to the organization environment. For the personal qualifications, of course, the human resource management should have qualifications for each and every position in the laboratory. And once they are qualified, they are given these job descriptions, and these job descriptions includes the responsibilities and their authorities in the laboratory, because not all processes or not all activities in the laboratory, all staff are authorized. They are given different authorities to do. And before this personnel are allowed to work in the hospital, they should have personal introduction to the organization environment. First, from the hospital, they are oriented on the SOPs of the hospital. And then second, there should be personal orientation by the chief medical technologist and the pathologist, and then by the different section heads in the laboratory. Involvement of people. The personnel at all levels are the essence of an organization. If the personnel in the laboratory are not happy, then you could not, you will not receive the quality of work that you deserve in the laboratory, because they are not happy. So their full involvement enables their abilities to be used for the organization's main benefit. When we came here, I was talking with a doctor whose specialty is occupational and safety, and he was telling me that there should be occupational and safety seminar and orientation for these personnel in the laboratory. Why? Because this is an occupation that deserves occupational health and safety. For example, a simple ergonomics chair is needed in the laboratory so that they can work with satisfaction, so they will not have backache and so on. Second one is training. For the training, oh wait, I think I missed one. Okay. So for the training, the pathologist or the quality manager should have a training needs analysis. They should actually, the new term now is not training needs analysis, but training needs and development, because the one way to make them happy is to give they needed training in the laboratory. There are laboratories, I know, that the medical technologists or scientists are not allowed to send them for training or seminars and so on, because sometimes it's a little bit expensive for the hospital to do that. But however, if, for example, the hospital does not have enough funds for training, we still can do in-house training of the medical technologists or the personnel. Competence assessment. Competence is very important because if the personnel is not competent in what they do, then they can miss or they can do errors in laboratory testing. And of course, this staff performance should be reviewed every year, and the continuing education and professional development should always be there. Now, training. Here is an example of the annual training plan in one of our hospitals, and it should include the training of all the staff in the hospital, including janitorial, housekeeping, etc. Competence assessment is necessary to ensure that persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. How do you explain competence? Competence is, for example, um, one pathologist has just graduated and passed the board. The other pathologist has been working for more than 10 years. Who do you think is more competent between the two? The first is, of course, they both have graduated from Doctor of Medicine. The second one, they have training on anatomic and the clinical pathology, and then they have passed the board and they got their PRC license. So both of them equal. But however, the difference is their experience. The number of years of experience of the first pathologist is less than the second pathologist. So the second pathologist who has more experience than the first one is more competent. So take action to acquire necessary competence and retain appropriate documented information as evidence of competence. So every documented information should be filed by the laboratory or by the human resource, including their PRC, their certificates of attendance of scientific seminars, etc. Okay. Now, for the staff facilities, staff facilities should have a good layout of the of the of the laboratory to study the workflow of the laboratory. And these facilities, as I've said, should be according to the requirements of the licensing department. And the second one is patient sample collection facilities. This is the most frequently visited facility of the laboratory, where you have extraction of blood. This is the sample collection facility. So this sample collection facility should be clean, should have the necessary chairs and beds for collection of blood of babies, and it should be maintained with environmental conditions maintenance too. What do you mean by environmental conditions? You should have a hygrometer in the laboratory, excuse me, and you should monitor the temperature, the humidity of the laboratory in the hospital. The second one is accommodation and environmental conditions, which is just the same. We have general requirements, laboratory and office facilities, and storage facilities. Oftentimes, these storage facilities are absent in most of the hospitals, and this is oftentimes their findings, because in the construction of the laboratory, these are often forgotten. They do not have storage facilities, but this is very important. Now, for laboratory equipment, reagents, and consumables, of course, equipment is very important. You should have SOP on selection and the disposal and use of each and every equipment in the laboratory. For the reagents and consumables, you should have an inventory of reagents and consumables, so that you will not say we cannot do. Say, for example, just very recently, we have a lot of dengue cases. If you have, if your reagents and consumables are still the same stock as before, where you do not have the epidemic for dengue, then there will come a time, or there will come a day that you will tell the patient, please go to another laboratory because we do not have dengue kit for testing. So we do not want that thing to happen in a laboratory because it's very important. Now, pre-examination processes. Pre-examination processes are the processes before you, the medical technologists, perform the test. So what are these requirements? General information for patients and users, and request form information. This is where the receptionist has a good job. Okay, and very important job for the receptionist is to check whether the request form is complete or not. If it is not complete, or it does not tally with what the patient is saying, or does not tally with the name of the patient, then it has to be brought back and sent back to the requesting physician. And this information for patients and users is that they simple instructions, written instructions should be given to the patients. For example, at OPD, you should instruct them on how to collect urine, how to collect stool, how to fast, how many hours should you fast before before blood is taken, extracted from you. So these are very important also to be there in the reception area. Okay, another one is primary sample collection and handling, sample transportation, sample reception, pre-examination handling, and preparation and storage. What is important here is the sample transportation. Sample transportation has to be placed in a container where you maintain the temperature, so that there will be no error in the results of the specimen. For example, you have a collecting satellite where you collect the blood and then bring the blood to the main laboratory. There should be a transportation bag that is suitable for this blood or urine or other tissues or other blood body fluids that you should be transporting. Now, for the examination processes, these are the requirements for the laboratory to comply during the examination of all tests. So the examination processes, you should verify and validate examination procedures, biological reference intervals or clinical decision values, and documentation of examination procedures. There are procedures on this, and I think we don't have time to present to you the individual SOPs for selection, verification, and validation of examination procedures. Okay, now, how do you ensure quality of examination results? Quality control is very important. As I've said, quality control is the lowest level of quality, but if you do not do that, then you do not have a good quality assurance, or you do not have quality management system in your laboratory, because it is a requirement. What do you do in quality control? For example, I'm testing for CBC or FBS. Before I run a batch of examinations, I have to run quality control. In the Philippines, it's allowed to, or internationally, they allow also 2 levels of control. One normal control, and the other one is abnormal control. Big laboratories, they have 3 levels of control: abnormally low, abnormally high, and normal. In small laboratories, they run it once every day, In big laboratories, because they have the bulk or volume, they do it every shift. In still bigger laboratories, they do it every batch of examination. So it depends on you, on the number or volume of tests that you do. Inter-laboratory comparisons is very important. In the Philippines, it is required by the Department of Health to have intra-laboratory comparisons. And this is done by the National Reference Laboratories. National Reference Laboratories, NKTI for CBC or coagulation. For chemistry, we have Lung Center of the Philippines. For there are other NRLs like RITM and East Avenue and Philippine Heart Center for anatomic pathology of the heart. Now, interlaboratory comparisons is, or NICWAS, as it is commonly known, is very important to join. It is a requirement. If you do not participate in the NICWAS required by the Department of Health, then you will not be given a chance to renew your license to operate. Okay. Now, it has been more than 5 years that we've been doing the NICWAS, and the minimum requirement is just to participate. But some of the NRLs are becoming very strict now. So the some NRLs does not want anymore only the certificate of participation, but you have to pass the examination, the NICWAS. So before it's just participation, but now no more. Some of them asked you to pass their survey. Okay, and then you have to compare the examination results. What is important here is that not only participate, but to know the results of the NICWAS, of the survey. Because if you will, it has been observed that some laboratories, when they get low examination surveys, or they did not pass, they would just skip it, but they do not review and analyze what was the root cause of their problem, why they did not pass. The ideal thing to do is to get the results. If you have excellent results, then you continue what you're doing because you're doing good. But those who failed should review and analyze what was the root cause, and for improvement, you should know what to do. Now, post-examination processes, meaning these are the processes or requirements that you do when you release the reports. Okay, there's a difference between the result and the report. The results are the ones that you get from the machines. After testing it, you get the result. But once the results are filled out in the result form, then you call that a report. Okay, and we should do review of results first before you release the reports. And you should have storage, retention, and disposal of the clinical samples, and I have talked about that a while ago. And the reporting of results. There are general requirements. There are report attributes and report content. What are these attributes? Sometimes you have to set to place some remarks. For example, a doctor requests for fasting blood sugar, FBS. It says fasting, but the doctor approves that even if there is no, it's more of the fasting, more than the limit of number of hours of fasting, he still allowed the patient to have to be tested for FBS. So those report attributes could be commented in the report. So the pathologists or the medical technologists can do some comments on the report. In the report content, there is an SOP on what to be placed in the report content, and it should be complete because it is to be checked by the auditor. Okay, now when releasing the results, there are two ways by which you release the reports, and that is through manual, through the patient, through the doctors, and sometimes through the electronic form. Nowadays, electronic, paperless reporting of results is now becoming very popular. Although it's very expensive to do that, but most of the big hospitals are now into electronic releasing of reports. And this electronic reports could be viewed by the patient, and they are given, because of confidentiality, data privacy, they are given passwords to view the results. Even the doctors, even if they are abroad, they can view the results electronically. Now, what is important here is the revision of the reports. For example, there's an error in the release of reports because of typographical error. If there are errors in the reports that they release before, or maybe still others are doing this, that they would just get the erroneous report and then tear it and throw it away. But that is not the ideal thing to do, or activity, or process. You should, the correct thing, or the ideal thing to do is to get the report and then file it, and then study it, review, and analyze what was the root cause, and then make another policy to prevent the recurrence of that particular erroneous activity. LIS. LIS does not mean that it is just electronic. LIS could also mean manual, or conventional, manual, or could be electronic. And in the LIS management, there should be authorized people to do it, and with job responsibilities, and of course there should be a manual for the laboratory information system management, which is very, very important, because nowadays the laboratory should follow the data privacy law, in which, when maybe the data privacy law, they are still preparing for people who can do the inspection later on. But once they are active, and once they have already people who can do it, they will be very strict. And data privacy can lead to fines of thousands of pesos for not complying with data privacy law. So the laboratory should be ready with this. Now, how do you successfully implement the ISO 15189-2012? As I've said, most of the laboratories do not want to apply for ISO 15189 because they said it's very expensive, it's very difficult, it's so tedious, and so many documents to prepare. The first thing that you should do is form a core team, or ISO core team. Communicate early and often with the whole organization, and involve as many personnel as possible. As many personnel, meaning all should be involved in the laboratory, and they should have an awareness training on what is ISO 15189 is all about. When possible, you could do flow chart of activities and Gantt chart and so on. And then once you're a little bit ready, pre-test your procedures, your work instructions, design your QMS after the way you work, and then analyze the laboratory's processes. Should be the driver for defining the amount of documentation needed. Okay, so that is the first thing that you should do. But who are the ISO? Not this is not IMS. This is ISO 15189 core team members, because it's the same. ISO core team should include your pathologist, your quality manager, your laboratory director, and the section heads. But as I've said, those are just the core team, but it should be cascaded to all the members of the laboratory. They should determine and provide resources that should be required to attain these objectives, and we need the help of the hospital, of the hospital management. The hospital management should be able to commit themselves to help the laboratory and establish methods to measure the effectiveness and efficiency of each processes. Okay, now organize ways to prevent nonconformities and eliminate their causes, and establish and apply a process for the continual improvement of the QMS. Okay, what are the results of this ISO 15189? What will happen if you are accredited for ISO 15189? You will notice that these laboratories with the ISO 151 accreditation, their customers are satisfied because the turnaround time of the results is faster. Unlike in other laboratories for CBC, they can get the results the next day or after 4 hours. But oftentimes in these laboratories, they can get the results right away. They can view it even while walking, while in their homes, and so on. And you become competitive. See, these laboratories that are ISO 15189 15189 accredited, they become very popular, and they have an edge with other laboratories, so they become competitive, and that is good for them. So what are the basic things to prepare? The schedule of activities. There, you should have review the documentation if they are complete. You set your quality objectives, targets, etc., performance indicators, and you establish your SOPs and work instructions, documentation and records control orientation, and of course, the internal audit training for 2 days. ISO 15189-2012 standards ensure that laboratories continuously assess customer satisfaction, thus continually improving the processes. As I've said, we're focused on the customer, not on our laboratory personnel. Of course, they are part of the accreditation, but we should have a paradigm shift, shifting our focus on the customers instead of us in the management. We should, in the management and in the laboratory staff, we should think of ways on how to satisfy our customers and continually improve our processes. ISO is a journey. Okay, ISO, oftentimes you will hear people say ISO, but it's better said ISO because this is not an acronym, as I've said. If it is an acronym, then it would mean International Organization for Standardization, but this is not. This is not an acronym because ISO means International Standardization for Organization. And this is a journey. What do you mean by journey? There's no end. You continue to improve your quality through quality improvement, so that as you go along with the journey, then you always improve. Sometimes in the journey you fall. Sometimes in the journey you become slow. Sometimes in the journey you walk fast and then fall. But as I've said, this is a journey, so we continue our quality journey through ISO. This is the roadmap to accreditation. We start with self-assessment in internal audits, then you train and then check your documentation and system implementation in operation, and then apply for accreditation. Application for accreditation is very cheap. It is, you apply in the Department of Trade and Industry. The application form is only for 300 pesos. Unlike in ISO 9001, you apply for hundreds of thousands for certifying to the certifying body. But here, it's only 300, and then you just pay for the auditors. In a small laboratory, they can have 3 auditors, and they are paid 500 pesos per per hour. So it's really not that expensive to apply for accreditation for ISO 15189. Okay, and then I have two more slides. The rationale of ISO for hospital setting is that patients complain about the poor quality of the services in a laboratory, but poor quality can be the cause of loss of lives, loss of revenue, low morale among health workers, and poor image of healthcare providers. Oftentimes we have these complaints, and sometimes you will hear not only in the Philippines but erroneous laboratory tests can lead to death of patients. For example, a very simple blood typing can cause death of the patient. But however, if you have a strict implementation of the policies and procedures for blood typing and so on, you will not have these problems in your laboratory. All right, I think that's my last slide, and I hope that for those who are aiming for ISO 15189 accreditation, I hope you won't be afraid to apply for this accreditation, because in the first place, this is not difficult, because this is just ordinary following the standards similar to that of license to operate and ISO 9001. If you are already certified and licensed to these two, it's very easy to follow the ISO 15189 standards for accreditation. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aureliaza. For our viewers, you may now type in your questions, as we will be reading them aloud for our speaker to answer. While waiting for your questions, we would like to again remind everyone to please do not forget to hit the evaluation button at the top right part of your screen. It will only take a few minutes to answer the evaluation. Participants who have accomplished the evaluation will acquire an electronic certificate of participation to your provided emails. We would also like to invite everyone to join us this coming November for TICME, Teknolohiya at Inobasyon Kaagapay ng Micro-Enterprises. Siguradong tekmerific ang inyong Nobyembre, kaya samahan kami sa Nobyembre 6 to 8, Tikme Uli, Lambanog sa Tayabas. Nobyembre 8 to 10, Tikme Hane sa Tanay, at Nobyembre 15 to 17, Tikme Tine sa Santa Rosa. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon, siguruhing i-like at i-follow ang aming official Facebook page, facebook.com/DOST Calabarzon. And now, we will be reading out some of your questions. We have one question po from Mirad Veridiano. Ano po ang latest version ng ISO 15189? Latest version po ng ISO 15189.
Okay. We have in the Philippines, we have dalawa kasi yan eh. We have ISO from abroad and one from the Philippines. The one in the Philippines is called PNS. So that is Philippine National Standards ISO 15189 2013. That's the one we use in the Philippines. PNS ISO 15189 2013. May I know, is it correct, Ma'am Amor? Okay. That's the latest.
Okay, ma'am. So another question. What do you think are the common issues why most medical laboratories do not avail the ISO 15189 accreditation?
What is the most?
What are the common issues why most laboratories do not avail the ISO 15189 accreditation?
Okay. I think I have said that more than 3 times. Oftentimes they said it is difficult. It is tedious because you have to do a lot of documentation. Pag sinabi nila kasing ISO, nako, ang daming documentation yan eh. Okay? And they do not want to deal on that, because that is a lot of paperwork that is out of their technical work. And another thing is because they thought it is very expensive. Then because some said that you will have to have funds of millions of pesos to be accredited for ISO 15189, because they said you have to do this, you have to buy this, you have to buy that, and so on. But if you are doing it already, it will not cost you millions of pesos.
In terms of proper disposal of clinical waste, covered din po ba ito ng steps to be ISO 15189
Yes.
accredited?
Yes. Of course. It should be part of the it will be checked by the auditors or the accreditors or assessors on your disposal of waste. For example, what are the things that should be checked for disposal? Urine. Where do you dispose your urine? Where do you dispose your stool? Where do you dispose the blood and other body fluids? Tinatapon niya lang ba yan sa ano? Some laboratories tinatapon sa sa CR, tinatapon sa ordinary na sink, and so on. That will be checked, and you have to follow the regulatory law on disposal of waste. And these there are two kinds of waste, di ba? Yung ordinary waste kinukuha ng ordinary na mga sa government, and it's for free. But for the infectious, you have to apply for accredited organization to get your waste.
Okay, ma'am, I think that's about it. That ends our second webinar for today. Again, we remind our participants to please do not forget to evaluate the webinar so that you will be able to receive a copy of your certificate of participation. Ma'am, meron pa pong isang question ng Mabel. Is there any ongoing drive to encourage those laboratories na wala pang ISO?
Drive,
like publicity drive po, to educate them to have their laboratories ISO accredited or certified?
yes. Actually, this is one of the things that is being done by the government through this group from the DTI. They're doing a lot of marketing through. I would like to commend your group, the group of DTI, through the leadership of Ma'am Amor. And this is one type of marketing that they're doing and giving information and awareness on the accreditation of ISO 15189. I would like to inform you that I would like to reiterate that there are only 5 laboratories in the Philippines that are accredited for ISO 15189, and that is a shame. Kasi sa ibang countries, thousands and thousands of laboratories are already accredited for 15189. Kawawa naman ng Philippines kasi parati tayong kulala. So what we do, for example, me at the Department of Health, we tried to train more assessors last maybe 2 months ago, and we already have 30 assessors for ISO 15189 already who are ready to assess the laboratories that are going to who wish to apply for the accreditation. Kasi ang sabi nila wala daw assessor, kulang daw, but it's not true. We already have 30, and these are people, pathologists, medical technologists who gave their time for free to increase the number of ISO 15189 accredited labs in the country.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. For our audience, will there be any more questions? Okay, if there's none, that ends our second webinar for today. Again, we remind our participants to please do not forget to evaluate the webinar so that you will be able to receive a copy of your certificate. For now, we will be having a 15-minute break before our third webinar. Thank you and see you at 11:45.